Okay, hello. Welcome back. This is your stimulus Q&A for Friday, August the 14th. I'm live in my Facebook group, Financial Literacy for Women Business Owners. If you're not in it, go join it. The link is down below if you're watching me on YouTube, where I'm also broadcasting. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of these. And this is also live on my Balance CFO Facebook page. And that's the fun with live, you guys. You know, you never know what's going to happen when you're live. So I don't know who was just watching previously, but the last live that I just did got cut a little bit short by my 6-year-old. So we just started our virtual school. Today was his first day of virtual school. So he's kind of got his Zoom meeting. And he came in here just a couple times. Yes, Annette. That is mom life right now. That is mom COVID life, especially where we're just trying to make things happen and kind of it feels like we're just trying to get by, right? We're just trying to get through it right now. So it's an interesting adjustment. So thank you for those of you guys who jumped back on. We are going to talk about stimulus Q&A. So if you had written me a question in the last Q&A, go ahead and repost it here because I don't have access to seeing them. So ask me whatever questions you have. I was just giving the update before about the fact that right now Congress still in stalemate as of today. No movement. Congress did go home. I think they are technically considered out of session now, but they have said that they would come back if there was an agreement that they needed to vote on. But at this point, they don't come officially back into session until after Labor Day. And so I'm not expecting much movement on anything until after that point. So that's kind of where we are at today. And we are just hoping that, you know, they work out a deal. They're $1 trillion apart. That's pretty far to be apart. So we just have to kind of wait and see. We're unfortunately, as we have been this whole time, a little bit at the mercy of the decision makers and people coming to an agreement to help the people that need it. So a lot of those issues that people are asking about right now, we just don't know the answer until we see what would be in a final bill, because there's been a lot of different things that are being talked about. If you want to know more about what all the different things that are being talked about are, you can watch my live Q&A from last week. I did a full debrief kind of what they're talking about, including talking about kind of this new loan that would be like a forgivable loan potentially that's part of the Restart Act that they're now talking about that has pretty good bipartisan support. So I don't know if it would take the place of PPP. I don't know if it would be in addition to PPP or what the situation would be, but that may be something to at least keep on the radar screen. Okay. Yes, working from home. Well, and now my son actually shares an office with me, which I thought was a great idea. Not a great idea, but I had moved him for this live and I just picked up figuring, right, the school district gave him a Chromebook. So figuring, okay, he's got, 30 minutes of juice probably in that thing. It's been charged. 5 minutes, you guys. That computer died in 5 minutes. So that's what he was coming in here to tell me the second time, is that the computer died and I had to go figure that out. And as I'm dealing with that, my 3-year-old who was supposed to be napping decided she was going to get up and join the party too. So chaos, totally chaos. Send him over, Mark. Send him over. The more the merrier. You know what? Come on over. Play some Nintendo with my kid. He's, he didn't need first grade. That's not like an important time in their life or anything. It's not like you learn anything important in first grade, right? Yeah. Okay. And that's got an actual question. So let's talk about it. My question is on the tax credit for family leave. Yes. So you're talking about the FFCRA tax credit where you can actually get money back to pay employees that have to take leave because their place of employment or their place of childcare is closed or the school is closed. There's a tax credit where you can pay them and get reimbursed. I have a video on that on YouTube. I have a home-based business, but there are a couple of weeks coming up where I don't have childcare, so it's going to be really hard with the 3 kids all to myself. Yep. Can you still apply to so I'm assuming you're self-employed, probably an LLC, or I'm assuming you may also be an S Corp. It works a little bit differently depending. But if you are an LLC or sole proprietor, you actually are eligible to give yourself paid leave. So what does that mean? Well, that means basically it reduces your payroll taxes. So again, I do talk about it in the video that I have on it, but this will come into play both when you're paying your estimated taxes, you could reduce them, or it comes into play at the end of the year when your taxes would be lower, but you would have to claim that you had this, basically you had this, this tax credit for leave. You get, if it's family leave, it's technically up to 12 weeks if you're taking it for your child, and there are limits to the amount. So I'm not going to get into, that was a whole discussion that we did a whole live on it. So I won't go into all the details. I just want to give some background for those of you who maybe don't want to know what I'm talking about. You may want to go check that out. Even if you're self-employed and don't have employees, this could apply to you as well. So yes, the question is whether the child, like why you don't have childcare, right? So there is, if it's COVID related, then yes, meaning your place of childcare is closed, right? And that you normally would be sending them to pre-COVID. If it's closed, their school is closed, they're having to remote learn, whatever it is, then yes. If it is more not COVID related, like you normally have a nanny and your nanny is taking time off or something like that, and completely un-COVID related, then it would not count. So it's not just for any reason, it's just if you do not have childcare for that reason and you're unable to telework. So like if your kids are older than like, I think the threshold is like 14. You can claim it for 18 and under, but if you can telework, right, and your kids are older, it's going to be harder to justify that, right? This is truly like, I can't work because I have a 4-year-old or something at home that I have to deal with it. I can't telework at all because normally I'm in an office setting. So you can, it's just a matter of, you know, if you're normally working from home, I think the age of the child, think about like, do you really need to take that time off, right? If you do, if that makes the most sense based on the age and the needs of your child, then you would be eligible for it as long as it was due to COVID reasons. I hope that made sense. I feel like that was kind of a meandering answer on my part, but hopefully that made sense. But again, if this is something that's interesting to you about this leave, let me tell you, this is the kind of thing that's going to start coming up over and over and over again about people having to have employees out, or they themselves needing to potentially take leave for various reasons due to either becoming sick with COVID, waiting for COVID tests, being quarantined, not having childcare. There are tax credits for all of that. Okay, so I want you guys to be aware of it because I think it's a really important thing that that a lot of people are missing. Okay, all right. If we receive PUA, will we continue to get paid the base amount without the $600 until the deal is made? Yes, you should. You should continue to get the normal base amount. Different states may have this differently. You shouldn't have to reapply, but check with your state if something weird happens and you like stop getting your money, see what you may need to do. But the only thing that ran out, because, and this is like just a terminology thing, because a lot of people, and you got it exactly right. I can't see the name of the person who this is, but a lot of people are thinking PUA ran out. It didn't. So PUA or PUA, whatever you want to call it, is Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. That is what expanded unemployment to be something that self-employed people or people without earnings history that normally would not be able to get unemployment because they don't have an employer who's paying into it, right? Like if you're a gig worker, you don't have an employer who's paying into unemployment on your behalf. So normally you would be able to get it. PUA said, yes, you can get it. That runs through the end of December. What ran out was FPUC, Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, which was the extra $600 on top. Now, the executive order gave $400, but I wouldn't be counting on that anytime soon for a lot of reasons. There's likely going to have to be a replumbing of the system. It may be an opt-in by the states where they can actually opt out if they're not going to contribute the 25% that they're supposed to contribute to that. So I wouldn't hold your breath on that extra $400. You may get it, you may not get it. If you get it, it should be backdated back to August 1st. But I'm just cautioning everybody not to assume that that's something that they're going to get. The $600 you were going to get, it just took a while for the states to get that thing up and running. This piece, the constitutionality is going to be challenged. I mean, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of question marks on it. So I just caution you until Congress comes up with something. Just don't count on anything. Okay, I've recently read that PPP covers phone, landline, and cell phones. Is that true? So I think this depends on the bank. Ultimately, at the very least, you would have to be able to be entitled to and have taken probably previously a deduction for those things. So it's not going to be your whole cell phone if you use it for business and personal. It would be equivalent to what you would get a tax deduction for. I would check with your bank though. I still think with the increase to 24 weeks, the easiest thing to do is just to use it for payroll if you can. If you can't, that's a different story. Then you might have to go looking for things. But previously, like self-employed people were looking for anything to be able to spend it on. Well, now if you're self-employed, you should be able to get the entire thing forgiven if you got the right amount of a loan. I do have a YouTube video on that too. So check that out if you're self-employed and wondering how to do that. The best thing to do in that case, specifically for self-employed people, is to pay it all out in payroll to yourself. It's also the most tax advantageous option. Again, I talk about that in the video. I won't get into that all here, but I think that's the easiest, and it's going to be the easiest to support, because whatever you try to use to claim PPP forgiveness, you're going to have to support. And if that's just payroll reports or payments to yourself, that's easy. Anything other than that, it's a little bit more of a wild card, and it's going to be dependent a little bit on the banks and what they want to see, which is going to vary just like it did in the application process. Okay, how long might it take for states to get things going to contribute the extra 400? Yep. So I got ahead of you, Haley. You're right on. Yes, I didn't even see your question, and I knew it was there. A while. I would 100% not hold your breath. The way that it's done, there's talk that they couldn't even use the existing unemployment system for some reason to be able to administer it. I don't know how much truth there really is to all of that, but basically it's really complicated. It's being challenged. Different states might opt out, so you might not even see it at all. There's a lot kind of wrapped up in that. So we're just going to have to wait and see what kind of the states end up doing on this. Okay. Warehouse rental was an expense I cut early May. Would land and portable storage building purchase be an allowable use of EIDL to substitute for rental of storage? Unfortunately, no. So and the reason for that, so you're saying land and portable storage, those are fixed assets. So if you're buying a building, even if it's portable, if you're buying machinery and equipment, if you're buying land, anything like that is a fixed asset, which you're not allowed to use. So EIDL is a working capital loan. What is working capital? It's the general operating expenses for your business, right? The general day-to-day operations, not anything that's considered financing or investing. Okay, so in this case, this would be considered an investing type of thing where you are buying fixed assets. They're technically considered investments into your business, even if they're replacements for something else. That would not be something that I would do. Now, you could use your EIDL money for other operating costs that you have anyway, and then use any money that frees up in your business to do what you need to do with the land and portable storage building. It doesn't say you can't ever do that. It just, you can't use specific EIDL money for that, which again, super silly, because what the heck is EIDL money? It's not like it's green, right? Or, well, all money is green, technically. It's not like it's orange. It's not like you can track exactly what color, each dollar is, but that's why it's important to kind of keep track of what you're spending that money on. Okay, whoops. Let's see. Sarah says, does the tax credit apply to sole props? If not, can I stay on UI for the same reason, lack of childcare? Yes. So you're going back to the FFCRA conversation, the tax credit for paid leave. It does apply to sole proprietors. The way you take that, though, is a little bit different. It will reduce your payroll taxes, basically your employer side of your payroll taxes that you would be due for that. And likely you wouldn't see the benefit till later. Staying on UI for lack of childcare, different states have kind of different viewpoints on all of that. So I would check with your state. They should have an FAQ that talks about when you can and when you can't. And it should have, they're probably making you certify, what situation you're under. So if they list that, or if you fall into one of those categories, then it may be better to just continue on unemployment. Because the thing is, this tax credit isn't something, it's not like they give you the money as a self-employed person. It reduces estimated taxes you would have to pay, and it reduces your taxes at the end of the year, but it's not necessarily money in the door today. You know what I mean? Whereas unemployment is actually money in the door today that you can actually take and use. So that sometimes is a little bit of a better option, I would say. So if you qualify for unemployment under your state's rules, then I would continue. Again, it really does vary by state, though, how they've written that out for certain situations. Okay. Yes, here's the replay for paid sick leave. So if you're watching this on Facebook, you can grab that link. If you're watching this on YouTube, you should just be able to go to my channel and find it. Okay. What would be the consequences of EIDL loan under 25K if it defaulted or can't be paid? Good question. So under 25K, there are no collateral. There's no personal guarantee, regardless of the amount that you get, right? So ultimately, probably would wreck your credit. It would have probably even on your personal credit, I would guess. But is that going to be something that has a whole heck of a lot of recourse? Probably not. I mean, if I'm being honest, we're going to have to see what programs they put in place for that. But ultimately, if your company goes bankrupt and you haven't paid off this bill, it's not like they can come take your car and your house, right? Especially if in general, but you have no collateral at all if you got under the 25K. So I don't think you have massive risk. Do I recommend that? No, you want to pay your debts back. That's the best course of action always. But it's not, it's not going to have the same impact as having some other types of loans maybe would. Okay, so that was one of the great things about EIDL, where people were really worried about all the stipulations and things you couldn't do with it and all this kind of stuff. The biggest benefit of EIDL, other than other loans, is it's oftentimes not secured. It's not secured by anything. So that is definitely a benefit when you're comparing it to other loan programs that require significant amounts of collateral that are at risk, right? This is not one of them if you got it under 25K. Okay. Did people lose video feed? Mark says he lost video feed. Hopefully you can see me. I don't know. It's one of those days. You probably did. Probably I'm just talking. Am I just a black box talking? Let me know if y'all can see me. I haven't seen anybody else say it, so I'm hoping I'm okay. Okay. Vivian. Vivian says, have you heard any changes to the PPP forgiveness criteria recently that make it more difficult on borrowers? No. In fact, if anything changes with PPP forgiveness, it's going to be the opposite. They are actively trying to push through legislative changes that would make it easier to get PPP forgiveness, especially if you have smaller loans. So right now, what's being debated is forgiveness for under $150,000 of PPP loans. So if your loan itself, if you got $160,000, you're out of luck. But if your loan origination value is under $150,000 or up to $150,000, you would get blanket forgiveness. What does that look like? The proposal is that it would look like certifying that you essentially made your best efforts to use the money in the way you were supposed to. We don't know what it would look like yet. So if it was passed, Treasury would then take that and they would make that certification and kind of show us what that would look like. It will not get harder. Why will it not get harder? Because banks are actually very heavily advocating for this to be easier. Banks don't want these loans. And I'll say it over and over again, because I think people think that people are looking for reasons for their loan to not be forgiven. It's actually quite the opposite. Banks do not want these loans on their books. They don't want your $17,000 loan. They don't even want your $60,000 PPP loan on their books. They really don't. They don't want to forgive 80% of your loan and then leave $1,700 unforgiven. They don't want to service that loan. That costs more to service than what they would be making in interest, which is extremely small. So banks themselves want to forgive these loans. They're putting a lot of pressure on Congress to make it easier and to lower the amount of paperwork. So if any direction, it's only going to get easier, not harder. That's my opinion on it. Okay. Mark says, used up PPP April 8th to June 8th, and at that time had Safe Harbor, yes, wanting to do forgiveness on original 8-week rules. Now one employee abandoned job. Is the FTE still met because we had the head count at the time, the SPE? So it gets a little tricky because everybody's going to have a slightly different scenario with this. So it's weird you can't see the rest of my face, so I'm just going to do this. So everybody's going to have a slightly different scenario with how this works out. If you did the 8 weeks, the main thing is, right, and what it actually anchors back to is what happened during your covered period. And if your average FTE, and I say average because you're going to take the average of that 8 weeks, or if you chose 24, you're going to take the average of that 24 weeks, right? Not what happened at the end, not what happened in the middle, was the average. So what could impact the average? Well, if you waited, 4 weeks to hire back employees, your average over that 8-week period is going to be low, right? It's because you're going to be impacted because you had 0 employees for the first 4 weeks, right? But if you acted pretty quickly and you followed the rules and you brought people back and you paid them what you used to pay them and you hit that, 75%, now 60% rule, right? Then you don't even have to worry about Safe Harbor. The point of Safe Harbor is to protect you if your average FTE during your covered period, either your 8 or 24 weeks, does not equal your average FTE during your reference period, which there are a couple of different choices for reference period. So I know, Mark, you have my PPP tracker, but anybody that doesn't, balancecfo.com/PPP tracker, because you can actually put the numbers in and see if you are penalized on your FTE. If you're good on your FTE count, then you don't need Safe Harbor. Safe Harbor only matters for people if they did not meet that FTE count or if they did reduce their employee salaries by more than 25%. That's where Safe Harbor kicks in to say, okay, even though you didn't do necessarily exactly what you were supposed to do, if you meet these different requirements, again, I have a video all on Safe Harbor as well. If you meet these requirements, then you can get it forgiven fully anyway, or be eligible for full forgiveness anyway. Okay. So it's a little bit confusing because it is different for everybody. So it just depends. If you're fine on your FTE count during your 8 weeks, you're good. You don't have to worry about Safe Harbor, which means you don't even have to worry about the timing of when you apply. You can just apply when you want to. Your application, but if you know you're going to need Safe Harbor, the timing of application may matter, especially if you're planning to lay off employees. Right. So the hardest people, the people that could get kind of caught in the crosshairs here, with this whole fact that now banks aren't taking PPP forgiveness applications, and yet a lot of people are running up on their 8 or 24 weeks already and want to apply, is that if you didn't meet your FTE head count, right? If you did not meet your average and you're counting on that Safe Harbor date kicks in when you apply for forgiveness, or December 31st, whichever comes first, right? That's the date that the amount of employees you have matters. So let's say your 8 weeks is up and or your 24 weeks, whatever it is, and you want to lay off some employees because you still don't have enough work for all of them to do. You paid them like you were supposed to with PPP, you kept them around, but you need to get that Safe Harbor because maybe you waited a few weeks to bring them back, or for whatever reason, your average FTE count was lower during the time you had the loan. If you can't apply for forgiveness right away, you're kind of stuck because you're like, well, I can't until I'm apply for forgiveness. When I apply, they're going to do an FTE count at that time. So that time period. So you want to apply for forgiveness when you have the most amount of employees if you are dependent on Safe Harbor. Again, I know that some of y'all are like, whoa, too much. But this matters to employees who are really thinking about changing the number of employees. You have to be really strategic and know the rules really well. I wrote an article for Gusto specifically on this. we will copy paste that down below too, because it can be really helpful. It talks about when and why you might want to apply sooner rather than later for forgiveness. And again, really crappy for some banks, honestly, to say, well, we're just going to wait. And I understand why they're waiting, because they don't, they want to see what happens with Congress, because it might make their jobs a heck of a lot easier. But by waiting, what they're doing is putting certain people who fall into this bucket of people that want to lay off employees but almost can't because it could impact their forgiveness, right? In a bad spot. And so that's something I think that was like an unintended consequence with all of this is people who fall into that bucket. So, okay, let's see. Oh, we got lots of them. Yeah, this is a good point by Vanda. This is a good point. So if you default on a government loan, yes, it could also, so that's the other thing, is that it could also put you at jeopardy for not being able to get another loan in the future. So credit problems also takes you out of contention for the loans. Different people are going to think that's more or less important. Okay, let's see. Cameron says, are you able to claim unemployment if you got a PPP loan but report it as income? Would this even be worth it since it would lower the amount you can qualify for? Yes. So in general, yes, you can usually, if you would otherwise qualify for unemployment, right? Like if you don't qualify for unemployment, if you're working full time and have income coming in and all of that, then no. But if you would qualify otherwise for unemployment, but you're also paying yourself with PPP, yes, you would claim it. The way you do that's going to be different in every state. And that's super annoying. And a lot of states don't even tell you how you're supposed to do it, which is frustrating as well. But yes, in theory, like most states seem to be taking the approach that yes, you would claim it, and you would claim it over the amount of weeks it is considered pay for. So, right, if you're doing the 8 weeks and you paid yourself 8 weeks, you would claim it over eight weeks. If you took the 24 weeks, a lot of people think you should claim it over 24 weeks, but let's remember, right? What is this based off of? PPP was 2.5 times average monthly payroll. You're only getting 2.5 months, i.e. roughly, it's like 10.5 weeks. It's annoyingly not exactly 10 weeks, but roughly 10 weeks worth of pay. So it typically would make the most sense to divide that, if you took 24 weeks, to divide it over 10 weeks, probably consecutive weeks. I know a lot of people want to do I'm going to do this week and then I'm going to claim unemployment. My biggest thing, if your state does not give specific guidance, and go check, because some do. Some ask the question on the certification, did you get PPP? Yes, what date? And then it starts counting from that date, however many weeks from there. Other states don't say anything. So the biggest advice I've given people is scour state websites, scour the Q&As, scour any like tutorials, right? Like some of them have these great like walkthroughs that you can do of how to certify your claim under PUA, right? So watch all of that. If you don't get the answer that you need, pick a process, right? Like make a decision, say, okay, I'm going to claim it for these 10 weeks, these like consecutive 10 weeks. And then I'm going to document what I did and when I claimed it and how I claimed it. Whether it's worth it or not totally depends on how much is your PPP, how much is your unemployment, and how much is your limit on how much you can make, right? Because you claim it basically as income, as other income that you made. So you kind of have to do that calculation. That calculation is going to be different for everybody, because some people can only earn, $75 and then they're out of unemployment altogether. Some people can earn up to $500 and still be able to get unemployment. And so you just have to kind of play around with the numbers and see which one makes the most sense, whether that's getting PPP or unemployment. Now, remember, don't count on that extra $400. It might show up. It might not. Do I think there will be extra money for unemployment that they will back pay eventually? Yes. I don't know how much. I don't know how long it's going to take to get that. So, consider that, but don't count on it, I guess is how I would put that. Okay. Liz says, hurricane-prone zone. Is the SBA EIDL issued to me during pandemic identical to EIDL that business access during natural disasters? And if the hurricane knocks my children's fitness business offline, is a separate EIDL loan, again, for under 24K, even possibility? Yes. So yes, that is a very good point. So Liz, The EIDL is the same program. It's the emergency, I'm like losing my words today. I can't even, disaster loan, in economic injury disaster loan. I was like, emergency? No, economic injuries disaster loan, but it is an emergency loan. And it is a loan program they've had for a long time, which typically has been used for natural disasters. So hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, right? Where you can apply for one of those to help your business. Yes, they've made some modifications. So the advance concept, the whole grant thing, that was just for COVID related. I don't know, like they put limits in. Usually it goes up to, I think, 2 million typically, and they kind of took it down to 150,000 limit. So I don't know if those qualifications, and also I'm not sure if the guarantee is always that 25K or not. The collateral guarantee is 25,000 or not for a regular EIDL loan versus a COVID one. But in general, the terms are similar. So very similar things you can and can't do with the money. So yes, I would expect if something happened and you needed to try to apply for an EIDL loan because of a hurricane or a tornado, right? What did you say? I think you were a hurricane in North Carolina. Yeah, that you likely would be able to. Now, they probably would take into account debt already outstanding, et cetera, in those decision makings. But yes, it should be something you would possibly be able to qualify for. If they did implement the 10K or whatever amount of EIDL grants for business later, will it be applied to everybody that applied for EIDL? Would it make any difference when someone applied? So what you're talking about is there is an act, the EIDL, I can't remember the name of the act anymore. I talked about it last week on my live, but there is an act where they are looking at EIDL, and some Congress people want to give people the full 10K. They say that was the intention. Everybody who applied should have gotten 10K. Not 1K per employee, which is what they got for their advance grant, the part that's forgivable of the EIDL loan. I'm not overly confident on this one to begin with. This is one that I think is like a pet project, but doesn't have significant bipartisan support right now. You'd always call your senators. This is something important to you. Call your congressman. But remember, if you got PPP, EIDL advance gets subtracted off of it anyway. So it's not nearly the same benefit if you also got PPP, which I think takes away some of the urgency. Now, for people who didn't get PPP and only got EIDL, this is a big deal, right? If you can get the 10K, that'd be great. The way I've seen it written now is, yes, my assumption is it would be everyone. Now, I don't know how they would end up giving that to people. If it would just be like, hey, like the first one that just showed up in your bank account one day, or if it maybe would only get extended to those people who actually took an EIDL loan, and what they would do is forgive the next, like let's say you got 2K of an advance, maybe they'd forgive 8K of your EIDL loan that you got. I don't know. We have to see, but this one, I'm not overly, like if I were a betting woman, I'm probably on the probably not going to happen side of this. But it's not impossible. Certainly not impossible. I wouldn't even put it like super unlikely. I just, I don't think it's something that's getting as much attention by Congress as some other things. Okay. Okay. Self-employed hairdresser. We have lots of you guys. I took PUA when closed. I'm back to work and now took PPP. Accountant says I can still have it forgiven because I didn't take both at the same time. Yep, that's very correct. Question, should I pay myself in one check or divide it into 8 or 10 weeks? If you're not taking PUA right now, it doesn't matter. So the question about like dividing it up really only matters for like a certification of unemployment. If you're self-employed, you can pay yourself at any point in time. You can pay yourself all at once. You can pay yourself over time. You can just write yourself a check or transfer the money, have the memo say owner pay reimbursement, whatever it is. I actually think the whole concept is silly. If you've been around for a little while, I talk about this a lot where I think, especially if blanket forgiveness happened, you wouldn't have to worry about it. But even if it didn't, I think the intention of this act was not to have people have to prove amounts paid to themselves if they were a sole proprietor LLC, right? If you don't pay yourself through payroll, it's silly to show what you paid yourself because oftentimes you just need to Because what happens if you need that money in your business, right? Like what if you have independent contractors or you have bills to pay, you have rent, and instead you use that money to pay yourself? Well, what are you going to do? You're just going to put it back in your business, right? Like that's how we would handle that. And so it's almost like this silly, like moving like shell game of like, oh yeah, here's me paying myself, but then you just put it back. So I don't think that was the intention. Do I think some banks will require proof of payment to yourself because they don't understand how the heck a sole proprietor or LLC works, like a Schedule C? Yes, I think some will, assuming we don't get blanket forgiveness. So I would have that proof, but pay yourself however you want. It goes more on the amount. You're forgiven for up to 2.5 times average monthly payroll, i.e. 2.5 times of your Schedule C, line 31, net profit divided by 12 times 2.5. That's what the total number matters more than how you pay yourself. Thirsty. Hang on a second. Back. Okay. Okay, good. So Mark said they're good on FTE headcount during the covered period. Then you're good. If you added someone else, yeah, you're totally good. So you don't even have to worry about safe harbor, Mark. You're in the clear. As long as you were good during your time period, you should be fine. Yeah, I just talked about this one. I don't think it's a super hot button. I think that bill, it's not impossible, but I would not count on, I would not take it to the bank. Would it be okay to transfer the EIDL funds to another bank account, which is under the same name, in order to keep those funds more organized? Yeah, totally. I would keep them under your business name for sure. Like I would keep it in a business type account. What you don't want to do is transfer that to a personal account, because all of a sudden they may say you took all that money to pay yourself, and then they would say that's not allowable. You can take parts of EIDL to pay yourself as long as it's not more than what you normally would. I don't love paying yourself with EIDL because it's debt, but I would keep it if it's a business type account. Yeah, you can totally move it around if you want to keep it separate. I actually recommend people keep it separate, especially if you're one of those people who got it as an insurance policy. Human nature is to spend what's in our account. So if you don't want to spend that money, put it somewhere else where you only use it in emergency. Use it as an emergency kind of insurance plan. Okay, yeah, so I got that one. Okay, I think that's most of the questions that I got. I might have missed your question on this, Vonda, but HEROES, I'm assuming you're talking about the HEROES Act. You might have asked a question on this. The HEROES Act is the Democrat version of the stimulus bill. The HEALS Act, which is actually, you can't look it up on congress.gov. It's the HEALS Act is like 8 different bills that they're putting together and collectively calling the HEALS Act. That's the Republican. That one's $1 trillion. The Democrats is $3 trillion. They're trying to meet somewhere, but it's not really coming out. It's not really coming out. But yeah, there's about a bajillion different acts that are happening right now. So hopefully they would all be part of one big package. I think that's what they're trying to do. But we may see them pass, smaller bills, but it doesn't seem like that's probably on the table. I think they're trying to, it's the negotiation tactics. I don't understand why a sole proprietor can pay themselves all at once and be forgiven, why we cannot report one lump sum to PUA. Okay, here's why. So this is a good question. The reason being, if you're an employee, so let's think about regular unemployment, right? If you're an employee, let's say you get paid every other week, okay? You get paid every other week. What do you claim each week? So let's say you got $100, you make $100 a week, so you're getting partial unemployment. So do you claim $200 every other week? No. You claim $100 each week because you're claiming what's earned, right? You're claiming what that money is for. So you don't claim it when it actually comes in the door. You typically are going to claim it in the way that usually unemployment words, what they want is what was earned that week, right? Now this is unearned income, but it's related to, it is meant to replace income for a 10-week time period, or 8 weeks, depending on which one you keep. But it's meant to replace income for that amount of time, right? So it's not like you just got one big giant windfall, and that's only 1 week that you would have to claim that, and then you get to take unemployment the other 9 weeks. that's not really in the spirit of what they're trying to do. They're paying you your normal pay, because what they're going to tell you is that PPP is technically what you can pay yourself out of your business, right? Some people will argue that, but ultimately that's what you pay payroll taxes on. If you're a Schedule C, right, your net profit is what you pay payroll taxes on. So that's your payroll. That's what you can pay yourself, and it's 10 weeks worth of pay. So you can't just say, well, I got it all in 1 week, so that's what I'm going to accept it, because that's not how it would work if you were in an employee somewhere. That's not how you would claim it either. Gosh, is there a place to find out how much each state received in the original CARES Act? Is the accounting of that spending? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I really don't. I will have to, I'll look around and see if I can find anything, but I haven't seen anything specifically on that. I mean, there are probably certain things that are public on that, but I don't know for sure. My EIDL account is originally going to be transferred to personal accounts. So do you think I should set up business accounts for those EIDL funds to be safe? Yes. I think all of this stuff, all the money that you're getting from different places, other than unemployment goes into a personal account, everybody. Make sure your unemployment is going to a personal account. Why? Because it's not business income and you don't want to be double taxed on it. If you put it in your business, you're going to be taxed on the unemployment, and then you're on personal side, and then you may end up kind of inadvertently being taxed on the business side if you put it in your P&L. So do not do that. But you do want everything else, EIDL, PPP, all that kind of stuff, that should be going into your business account, okay? And if you don't have one, go and open one, aslo.com, totally free. It's one of my faves. So check them out, azlo.com. Totally free business banking, all online. And that's a great thing for parking funds like this. Yeah, I mean, I said earlier, it's not exactly like, it's 2.5 months. The thing that maddens me about all of these rules that Treasury put out is they switch back and forth between weeks and months. And so forever it was 8 weeks, and they're like 2.5 months, but then you claim unemployment weekly. So like pick 10 weeks, pick 11 weeks, whichever you want, right? Like it's somewhere in there. It's like 10.5, whatever, maybe it's 10.8, pick one, right? I don't think that's going to be a big sticking point. On this whole thing. Just make sure you have backup for what you did. But it's maddening. Okay. Receive PPP. I'll take a couple more questions and then it's getting late. Receive the PPP total used on 1 full-time and 2 part-time seasonal employees in 12 weeks. Great. Kept the 2 part-timers for about 6 more weeks, hoping industry would come back. Unfortunately, still totally shut down until next year. Yeah, so again, it depends. Like if you were fine during your covered period, if your FTE count was what it should have been during that covered period, then you're okay. But if you did it in 12 weeks and then let people go, you could have an issue. In that case, like I mean, can you think about when you actually apply? Maybe you have until December 31st. Okay, so maybe things will be better by then. But really, like it's that time period that needs to have your number of employees. Can you bring an employee back for a week or 2, right? Like, I mean, you want to do what's in the spirit of this thing, but again, you gotta, I think everybody should be able to get forgiveness for this, but you might have to finagle's not the right word. It's not a good word. It sounds a little like you want to do what's in the rules, but make sure you know the rules. And when you know the rules, that means you can make certain adjustments to make sure that you meet the rules, if that makes sense. Where you don't have to necessarily keep them until they open forgiveness, so you're paying them for like months and months. But like maybe when it's time, maybe you're like, okay, well now is a good time for me to hire back, and then that would impact your count as well. Okay, I'm going to take a couple more, 2 more questions, and then. Where do you put the PPP loan in QuickBooks? Right now, before it's forgiven, I would put it on your balance sheet as a loan. So it is going to be like a note payable. It's going to be a liability account, not on your P&L. So that's where it's going to go. Once it gets, and then as you pay things out, make sure that you're either marking in your in your QuickBooks, like on your P&L, maybe have separate accounts for like payroll dash PPP funds. Like if you paid it out of PPP funds, you might want to have a separate account or use class tracking, just depending on which version of QuickBooks you have. I think Plus and above have class tracking, or maybe even lower than that. You just have to turn it on, and then you can assign a class. So you can say, okay, this payroll was paid with PPP, and assign a PPP class. That way you can figure out what you paid with it, so that when it comes time to do your taxes and you have to exclude those, because remember, expenses we pay with PPP are not deductible for tax purposes. So if you paid employee payroll, if you paid rent, that's not going to be deductible. So you'll have to kind of track that. But until then, keep PPP on your balance sheet because it is not income. And even when it becomes income, when it gets forgiven, you're going to move it off your balance sheet. You can put it on your P&L, but it's going to be as non-taxable income. So that's going to be important with PPP. Okay. Oh, man. Let's see. Let's see. I got PPP today. Good. I guess it came in today. I think they closed it last week, but it looks like it probably came in. Do I need to use right now, continue to coming week, or can I hold for a few months and use later? Technically, your covered period starts now, and there's a lot to consider when you're deciding on that. But if you got PPP now, more than likely you should start using it pretty soon. Because remember, if you have employees that you don't hire back right away, that's going to impact your total FTE count. But if you think you're going to be able to get to that FTE, you just have to familiarize yourself with the rules. There's a lot of rules around this. I have so many videos. Check out the video on Safe Harbor on my YouTube. I think that's going to be the most helpful for you. It's just Jamie Troll on YouTube. And it's going to talk about how you can get Safe Harbor. So as long as you familiarize with the rules and know when you have to bring employees back by, but your covered period does start today. Doesn't mean they're not going to force you to like hire back employees today, right? That's your decision. But it could impact your forgiveness later on down the line if you don't familiarize yourself with the Safe Harbor rules and make sure that one of those applies to you, which you can. So, okay. Last question. Let's see. Sole proprietor, PPP. I was going to put all PPP in separate account. Forgiveness, ask for all owner pay. Do I include any income I earn? I'm not sure I'm following. Sole proprietor, PPP. I was going to put all PPP in a separate account. Yep. Forgiveness asks for all owner pay. Do I include any income I earn? No. Yeah. So no. You're talking about on the forgiveness application. It says the maximum you can put in there is 2.5 times average monthly payroll. So you can't actually put into your forgiveness application anything else. So you would just put in that the amount that you were allowed through PPP, the 2.5 times average monthly payroll. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'll answer this because this is a follow-up. Did you say that when PPP loan is forgiven to put it on IRS is non-taxable? Does that mean IRS has changed their position on the expenses paid with PPP loans as being deductible? No. So the income is non-taxable. So that's what I was just saying. The income is non-taxable. The expenses are not deductible. That's why you should capture the expenses separately on your P&L somehow, and also on a spreadsheet probably. Because those are not going to be deductible, but the income is not taxable. So what you don't want to happen is you put PPP in, you get taxed on the income, and you don't take the deductions. Then you just got double whammied, right? What this is no, you're not going to get taxed on the income. It's non-taxable income, but that's why you don't get to take the deductions because you didn't pay tax on that income to begin with, like you do for income from your customers. So they're not going to let you also get the double benefit of getting to take the deductions on money that was given to you untaxed, if that makes sense. So it is non-taxable income, but you can't deduct your expenses. That's kind of how it works. Okay. Thanks, guys. I love y'all. Thank you for those of you who came back after some fun family, life and things, mom life. You guys are awesome and I appreciate you so much. And I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend and I will see you back here next week. Bye, guys.